and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 170. And today's date is September 23rd, 2013. And the title of this episode is Warning, High Probability of Something Big Happening Very Soon. And what we're seeing out there in the world is a huge buildup for a big false flag coming soon. We see what's happening in Kenya. We see what they're saying about al-Qaeda and al-Shabaab, and they're linked to al-Qaeda, and we see what they're trying to do to bring this false flag to the U.S. so they can start the war in Syria and Iran. And I'm going to break this down towards the end of the report and go over what I've laid out so we can see what possibly could be happening in the next couple of weeks. But let's get into the economic collapse news right now. And what we're seeing right now in Iceland and in Italy, something called bail-ins. And we've discussed this before, and I've discussed this on other reports. And I do have on the x22report.com site a document, which is the FDIC Bank of England document, which explains that under the Frank-Dodd Act, they can no longer do bailouts, but bail-ins on creditors of banks are allowed. And here we saw in Cyprus, they did a bail-in and implemented capital controls, and it was leaked that this would become the template for further problems down the line, and now we see they are using this template. And in Iceland, this goes on to say that Iceland's government declared all deposits in domestic financial institutions were blanket guaranteed. That means all deposits were guaranteed. But what they're looking to do right now is that anything over 100,000 will no longer be guaranteed. And the bank in Italy, the Monte Paschi Bank, is doing a bail-in where, of course, this is Italy's oldest bank, and what many are saying is the most insolvent bank, quietly commenced a bondholder bail-in after it said that it suspended interest payments on 3 hybrid notes following demands by European authorities that bondholders contribute to the restructuring of the bailed-out Italian lender. And this also goes on to say, Bloomberg reports, Monte Paschi said in a statement that it won't pay interest on about 481 million euros of outstanding hybrid notes issued through MPS Capital Trust II. And we are seeing this all take place now, and banks are starting to do bail-ins because these countries, and especially the U.S. and all the other countries, do not have the funds to bail out these institutions. Most of the countries are in so much debt, have so much high employment, that they cannot get out of their own way at this point. So what's happening is the only place these banks have to look is within themselves and the people who deposit money in the banks. And it always starts off with the unsecured deposits, and then it moves through depositors, which now they're calling them creditors, and they implement capital controls. They replace your currency with worthless bank stock, and we're going to see this spread all throughout Europe and into the U.S. because we know there's no more money left. The debts are so high, the laws are in place, and we're going to see bail-ins occur. And here in the U.S., talking about debt, they're discussing or arguing about the debt ceiling, and the president's out there, saying that we're not a banana republic, we're the U.S., we pay our debt. Well, I hate to say, and raising the debt ceiling doesn't mean we go into more debt. Then why do they call it a debt ceiling if it doesn't mean that we increase our debt? And I hate to say this, but the president, when he came into office, the debt was $9 trillion. Now it's close to $17 trillion. So, yeah, I don't know how he's coming about this, but it's completely ridiculous. Nancy Pelosi's out there saying there's nothing left to cut in the budget. The cupboard is bare. And she went on to say we cannot have cuts just for the sake of cuts. But what about all that funding that we send over to Egypt, that we send over to Saudi Arabia, that we send over to Israel, that we send over to all these other nations? It's not like thousands of dollars. It's not even millions. It's billions of dollars. And they're talking about cutting things here in the U.S. Maybe we need to stop that funding out there. And let's ask ourselves another question. Why do they fund all of these places? And why do they send them billions of dollars? Well, we all know the answer to this. Because they want all the puppet regimes to keep everything at status quo, so they continually use the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. They keep the private Western central bank implemented in their country, and what do? They use this money to pay them off, and they use it for other reasons also, to wage war on other countries, to supply them with weapons, and they funnel things through these countries. But they never bring any of that up. They only bring up programs here in the U.S. that directly affect the American people. And believe me, there is plenty to cut if we really went through and looked at what they were spending money on. And I'm sure there's a lot of other ridiculous things that they are spending money on. But they're never ever going to mention anything about the amount of money that we send to those other countries. Now, we see that U.S. manufacturing activity growth has slowed in September, and it's the lowest in 3 months. It's falling for the second month in a row. And we can see that the economy is not getting better. And I discussed this in my other reports, that the Fed is the entire market. This entire market, the stock market, unemployment, inflation, GDP, is a complete illusion. They are controlling everything because they understand. They know what's happening here. They don't want the American people, the rest of the world to know, but they understand that they need to continually pump this market up. And believe me, if they can make a case right now to push more money into the banks and into the system, they will. And we might even see this coming up this late fall, early winter, where all of a sudden some type of huge event happens that allows them to do this. And they understand they have no way out of this. They need to continue to create and print money, and just hearing the word taper, the markets fall. Not even doing the taper, just hearing it makes the markets go down. And can you imagine if they started doing it, the markets would just collapse and implode. Now let's move on. People have always telling me that I'm talking about bad news, and why am I always talking about doom and gloom? And I am just reporting on what the news is out there and taking a look and diving deeper into what is being said. So here's some good news for everybody. In New York, Albany is creating a resolution that will nullify the NDAA, and it will support basically where nobody can be arrested and under a suspicion of being a terrorist, and they will even go a step further, where this goes on to say that if the resolution is adopted by Albany City Common Council, law enforcement in Albany will be required to interpose between the U.S. military and other similar agencies and Albany residents under the NDAA's special provision, or under any interpretation of presidential authority permitting detention of U.S. residents without trial under the law of war. And they are going and pushing this to protect the citizens because they see what this NDAA is. This is a law to pick up everyday citizens who the government believes to be some type of terrorist. It doesn't matter if you're a foreign terrorist or a domestic terrorist. You will be picked up, thrown into jail without a trial. This is what this law says. And we also have to remember, the government right now is using the Patriot Act, using the NDAA, will be using all the other laws and executive orders to keep, and they're using it right now, to keep an eye on every single American, to put them on lists and into groups because they understand the collapse is coming. And what they need to do is filter through all these people who might give them a problem. And this is why they're doing this. This is why DHS was created. This is why TSA was created. This is why FEMA was created. They are organizations that have nothing to do with the military, that can interact with local authority, and they are the police of the U.S. government, and they're able to go into all the states and move around and work with local authorities, and they seem to have their hands in almost everything at this point. And this was created to control the American people before, during, and after the collapse. And as we know, they need to get the weapons away from the American people. And they realize that this would be a huge problem because they do not want these people rising up and starting some type of revolution where they might be removed from government office, the central bankers might be removed, and we might get rid of the central banking system, and this is what they're most afraid of. So what they're doing right now is they're trying to pass these gun laws. They're trying to create an atmosphere where people believe that this is the new law, but I hate to say it, the Second Amendment overrides all of this. But again, most people don't realize this. So they're trying to push through the gun bill and the UN Arms Treaty. So when they do declare martial law, they will have the ability to go around and say, give me your guns. We saw this happen in different disaster scenarios, and you will see it happen when martial law is declared. It will give them the opportunity, and it will enable them to go around and say, nope, under the new law, the UN Arms Treaty and the gun bill, we need your guns, and we need you to hand them in. And I hate to say it, most people at that point will probably abide by that law and hand in their guns. And they're hoping to get the majority of the people to do it. Just like in California and other states when they have this buyback program and people rush in and they sell their weapons, they're going to do the same thing. And during the collapse, we also have to remember money is not going to be flowing. People are not going to have jobs. People are going to be hungry. And if they come up and say, listen, the government will give you food for your weapons, that's a possible scenario where you turn in your weapon, no questions asked, we'll give you food. I mean, these are all the things that we have to be aware of what's going to happen. And with these laws, it makes it easier for them and their DHS and TSA to follow this because they tell them that this is the law. And the White House, came out, and Obama is saying that, we need to tighten the access to guns, and we need to pass these laws, and he needs the support of the American people because he understands that the laws that they try to pass through earlier this year were shot down, and they need the support of everyone to get these laws through. And he went on to say, we can't rest until all of our children can go to school or walk down the street free from the fear that they will be struck down by a stray bullet. Okay. Now, Japan is installing an advanced U.S. X-band military radar. And what this does, this radar system allows them to monitor North Korea missile launches. It allows them to look across the Sea of Japan and allows them to monitor missile launches. And China is extremely upset and criticizes Japan for this. And this went on to say that this is not conducive to regional nuclear non-proliferation and stability and will cause an extremely negative impact on the global strategic balance. And this was from the Chinese foreign minister. And what we can see happening here is that lately Japan has built the largest warship since World War II. They're trying to become not not to be a pacifist nation anymore. They're trying to change their Article 9 of their constitution so they can have the ability to strike. They are receiving these new radar systems, which is going to be manned by 160 U.S. service members and civilian contractors, and they are getting prepared for what is coming, and they know what's coming. Already, the U.S. has set up bases in the Philippines, all around China, and they call it encircling China, and they're doing this on purpose. And we can see that they are setting up missile launch centers in Romania and on the east coast of the United States. They are having many drills with different countries. Russia is having drills. We're seeing China have drills, and we're seeing this all over the place because the tensions of war are building up. I know in the mainstream media, I know that everyone's talking about, oh, this peace with Syria. They're abiding by all the regulations. The U.S. is going along with it, but the U.S. is doing everything in their power not to go along with this. And this brings me to Assad now is saying that gunmen could hinder the UN teamwork in inspecting their chemical weapons. And he went on to say, we know that these terrorists are obeying the orders of other countries, and these countries do drive these terrorists to commit acts that could get the Syrian government blamed for hindering this agreement. And we know what he's talking about. The paid mercenaries from the U.S. government are the ones who are handling and pushing this civil war with Assad, and they could be instructed to fire upon UN inspectors, and the U.S. can then say they are hindering the process, they broke their agreement, and now we are able to strike. Now Russia is accusing the U.S. of a blackmail over Syria. And it goes on to say that our American partners are beginning to blackmail us. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov told Russia, Channel 1 television. Right now, Western partners are trying to push through a resolution under UN Chapter 7, adding that if they were successful, Washington would move the Chemical Weapons Convention aside to advance individual, personal, or geopolitical state ambition. Is an absolute deviation from what we have agreed on with the U.S. Secretary John Kerry. And he went on to say, the Western countries are intent on ousting Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to show they order the music in the Middle East. And what we're saying here is that the U.S. is going to do everything and anything to get this war started over in Syria or Iran. It doesn't make a difference. Iran is the grand prize. This is where they're trying to get to. And what we're seeing right now is more propaganda to push this war forward. There is a report now coming out saying that Iran is now producing deadly sarin gas. And it goes on to say that the Revolutionary Guards is producing 5 deadly gases under the project name of Basat as part of the Islamic regime's chemical weapons program, according to intelligence received from a member of the Guards serving in the province. And of course, the source cannot be named due to security reasons, But we can see what is happening here. They are building the propaganda that Iran is very close to building a nuclear bomb, which they've been saying since 25 years ago. Every 3 to 5 years, they're saying that that they're about 3 to 5 years out building a bomb, and they've been saying this for 25 years, and still there's no bomb. And here they are saying the same thing. We understand that Netanyahu is coming to the U.S. to meet with President Obama on September 30th to discuss the new red lines against Iran. And we understand that Iran and Syria have a treaty with each other that Iran would help if Syria was attacked. Now, they need to get this war started. They don't care how, and what they have to do now is they need to push this forward. And there are many different ways they can do this. And one would be a cyber attack. And I've been talking about cyber attacks, ever since I started doing this. And I still believe that there is going to be some type of cyber attack. But right now, the Department of Homeland Security Industrial Control Systems Cyber Emergency Response Team reported that there were a third more cyber incidences reported by the energy sector in the 6-month reporting period ending in May. And what they're saying is that these attacks are coming in and they're much higher than they used to be. And Joe Weiss, managing partner at Applied Control Solutions, has pointed out for years that the power grid equipment supports just about every critical service: water, oil, gas systems, manufacturing, telecommunications, transportation, and banking. And Weiss said that many large components of the grid are not made in the U.S. and cannot be replaced in days or weeks. A targeted attack against this equipment can cause outages of up to 9 to 18 months or more. And as we know, Janet Napolitano, when she left, she was talking about when there is a cyber attack on the U.S., and we understand other government officials have also talked about a cyber Pearl Harbor, a virtual 9/11, and they've been doing this for over 2 years, building the propaganda of cyber attacks. Now, what's happening is there is a cyber attack drill scheduled for October. And it's funny, I found this that says that more than 1,000 banks will test their incident response strategies by participating in a simulated cyber attack exercise. And it goes on to say the bad guys may launch a DDoS attack to divert attention, so they can hijack an account or initiate fraudulent wire transfers. And this is going to be a 2-day drill this October. And we know what happens when there are drills, especially those drills that don't get publicized. Things happen where they can say, okay, red light, it's a drill; green light, it's a go, and it's a main cyber attack hitting the banks. And we can see that this is a potential false flag, and it's coming up in October. And what is happening now all across the world, and this is why I say that that there's a huge probability of something big happening. Because what do we know? We know the U.S. central bankers need to get the war started in Syria or Iran. And we know that the American people and Congress are completely against this. We know the central bankers need to capture the natural resources of these countries or any other country, because they believe when the system collapses, they will use these natural resources to start the system over. And what we're seeing now in Kenya is a very interesting false flag. And because of what's happening in Kenya, the NYPD has heightened security at key locations around the city in response to what's going on. And they went on to say that they monitor all around the world, and if they see something happening, they beef everything up. But we understand now that they are trying to make a case between what is happening in Kenya to al-Qaeda to America. And there are reports coming out that some of the militants in this terrorist attack are from the U.S. and from other countries. And they're saying that 2 of the American citizens are reportedly from Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Minnesota, and the other is from Kansas City, Missouri. And they're saying that Minneapolis has a large Somali community with a history of recruitment efforts by al-Shabaab as well as al-Qaeda. And Peter King, a Republican member of the U.S. Homeland Security Committee, said Sunday that the al-Shabaab militants have recruited up to 50 people from Somali American communities inside the U.S., and the FBI is on alert for any possible plans for follow-up attacks on targets inside America. Now, why are they down in Kenya? Let's see. The mall is owned by Israel. Israel sent their forces down to Kenya, most likely to make sure that none of the terrorists come out alive, so they won't be able to talk. We understand now that these militants are made up of al-Shabaab with links to al-Qaeda. They're American, they're British, and Israel is down there, and the U.S. and the president is saying that they might get involved down in Kenya. But the question really is, what is the purpose of this? And I believe there are two things going on here. Number one, Kenya has huge oil deposits which were discovered in 2012. China is making deals with Kenya to build a pipeline. The U.S. wants, and central bankers, wants control over this entire region. So, what they have done is they have created a terrorist type of incident where the U.S. now says they might use military hit targets in Kenya, and the United States is reportedly preparing a list of targets for possible military strikes in Kenya and some other African countries. And the reason, and these are developing targets, and they're refining the target list, trying to fill any gaps that we possibly have. And you understand they do the same thing in Yemen. They do the same thing in the other Middle Eastern countries. They are out to steal the natural resources in these countries. And we understand that Kenya has signed a $5 billion deal with China, and because of the newly discovered oil fields. And what else do we understand there is that Kenya and the Uganda pipeline was connected. It could pipe 500,000 barrels of oil per day. And we also understand that that China has already made this deal, and the central bankers are looking at this and saying, wow, this is a lot of natural resources. We need to get in there. Now, the other thing that is happening at this point is that they're linking the al-Shabaab with al-Qaeda, and they're saying that these are Americans and British forces that are the terrorists, and they're saying that these groups are located in America. Are these the lone wolf groups that they're talking about? They are very worried that these types of groups in America could be terrorist and could hit targets someplace in America. And we see all of these different things starting to add up. We had al-Qaeda giving us a warning that they were going to attack the U.S. in small individual groups in different places. We understand the government officials are saying that al-Qaeda now is broken up into lone wolf groups that cannot be traced. We understand that Netanyahu is coming here in September 30th to discuss something with the president. We understand that Janet Napolitano resigned and got out of D.C., but before she left, she said that there's going to be a cyber attack. Not if, when when a cyber attack hits, it's going to be horrific and shock America. We're seeing many FBI warnings about cyber attacks. We understand in October there is a 1,000-bank cyber attack drill being held. We understand now that al-Qaeda is now acquiring or creating chemical weapons. And they are linking al-Qaeda to what happened in Kenya. We understand that FEMA Region 3, which is in the D.C., Virginia area, has been stocking up and put on alert come this October. So with all this put into place, we understand that something is going to happen, something big, because they need, first of all, to get the war started in the Middle East. And the only way to do this is to shock the American people and Congress into begging for a war. And this could come from a chemical attack. This could come from a nuclear explosion. This could come from anything. This also could be coupled with a cyber attack on our financial institutions, which would then allow the Fed to print or create more money to increase QE, because this is what they really want to do, because they understand that they have no way out of this, and the only way to do it is continually to create and print money and keep the market pumped up as long as possible, because they realize that the U.S. dollar and the economy is doomed, and they're just trying to keep this going as long as possible. We also understand that the fiscal budget for arming the paid mercenary and for the government comes up September 30th, and it starts again in October. So there are many different things happening all at once, and we're seeing that the Fed is losing the respect of the financial elite, and they're seeing the writing is on the wall, and we see that the stock market is having a very difficult time staying above in the green area. We're seeing that Friday they closed almost 200 points down. We're seeing today the stock market is down by 50, and again, they will keep the gold pushed down until the very last minute, until they can't do it anymore and control it. And I do believe that what is coming very soon is going to be very big. And I see all of these things being put into place, all the things around the world. I mean, even they're saying that, the al-Qaeda, they have a far-reaching effect. We see in Syria that many people are joining the al-Qaeda forces. And we know what all this is. This is one big false flag, one gigantic false flag to get the war started over in Syria or Iran. Listen, everyone, be safe, be well, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.